Good morning, good morning. Good morning again, folks. An actual morning, too. I actually got up on time. Nice, right? Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. We're going to that horrible world known as the JRC. But before we do, I want to elaborate on something I haven't addressed much on this channel, and then the usual disclaimers. So it was brought up in my comments yesterday in regards to how sometimes when an autistic is in an immense amount of pain, that it doesn't always show up physically in a way that neurotypicals can understand. I want to elaborate on this a little bit because this feeds into something that became very much a problem for me and my aunt back in my high school days. What I'm referring to in particular is my reactions, even less so than they are now, were not something that could have been very easily read. I didn't really express outwardly in a neurotypical manner emotions such as gratefulness, happiness, these types of things. Thankfulness, this sort of thing, right? Because the way that I manifested those things back then was through writing. It was through my actions towards these individuals. And what I'm talking about is not the type of actions that are so easily read. I'm talking about if I felt particularly thankful or grateful for something, instead of waxing poetic with a bunch of empty words, I would do something for that person. In particular, maybe I would go ahead and clean the entire house. If an autistic's hyper-focus attention to detail. Maybe instead of it showing on my face, I might get you something like a diamond necklace. This is back when I had money, folks. God, I miss that. Or maybe I would make you something. I know it doesn't really show much on this channel, but I do have very much an artistic side to myself. I've been writing poetry, writing stories since I learned how to write. And I've been drawing for years. Years and years and years, folks. I used to have notebooks that I carried around with me for years that I ended up losing because of my fucking ex who got choppy with my hand. But you all know that story. The point is, many of us autistics do not display emotions or even understanding or empathy in a way that neurotypicals understand. And because of this fact, there came to be this idea that we had no presence of mind. Even people like Tony Atwood believe this. It's completely false. It's complete bullshit. To sit there and tell me I don't have empathy, when the first time I watched Andre McCollum's videos, I bust into fucking tears and was pretty much inconsolable for days, years. It's still hard to watch. To tell us that we don't care about our parents because we're not openly hugging them and being exuberant about it. It's a fucking insult, folks. Granted, I was not one of those autistics. I was very huggy. So much so that when I was younger, I would hug strangers. I would walk up and start a conversation with a family at a table where I didn't know a single soul as a kid. I was that autistic. Yeah. It's different for all of us, but all of us deal with it to a certain degree, particularly when we're younger. You may ask me, but Tiff, why is that not so now? I can make it simple for you. Acting. Okay? When I am showing the emotions to the neurotypicals in a manner in which they expect it to see it, I am acting. Doesn't mean that emotion is false. It means I'm presenting it in a way that is not natural to me. So I would literally, early 20s, sit there in front of a mirror in order to practice how to outwardly show my inward emotions. In particular, because this was in the time when I was working for the state and I had to be able to learn how to do these things. I was speaking at conferences. I was expected to network with politicians and other people in the field in order to create resources for people here in my state. I was expected to do these things in regards to helping with laws get passed, like the Employment First Initiative. It was a necessary evil, if you will. But it wasn't natural to me at the time. Okay? Now, the JRC would sit here and tell you, well, then that now it just comes more naturally to you. So you're becoming more atypical, that neurotypical. That's the point. No, it isn't, Karen. Just because it comes easier to me now does not mean that it's automatic. It's not. It's something I have to consciously tell myself to do. It doesn't just naturally, spontaneously come out of me. I have to think about it. Those reminders I stick in my head. Okay, I have to do this. I have to make my face do this. See where I'm going here, right? Yeah. Because of this is how I was able to go out there and, do my job and become as good at it as I was. And I'd like to think still am. Now, I was still very much in my shell in my 20s. My pseudo-autistic bubble of nope, I like to call it. I stole it from Paul. My pseudo-autistic bubble of nope. What really brought me out of my shell, what really helped me truly become the person that I am today, was when getting involved with advocacy, starting to get involved with individuals with my same diagnosis. When I started the advocacy and the support groups out here for people like me. Because believe me, when I say there's a power vacuum towards those of us who don't present in the typical autistic manner, I mean there's a vacuum that I have been trying to address for well over a decade. Yeah, that. So, the difference is when you're in a room full of your actual peers, you don't have to act anymore. You are free to be yourself and communicate in a manner that is actually natural to you. And nobody's going to look down on you for it. What I find particularly interesting is when you get a group of autistics, and it's just us. There's no oversight, no nothing. Okay? We understand one another. You know what I mean? There's no need to act or prove your emotions. They can see them for what they are without you having to do anything extra. We can read each other's emotions, how we feel, have empathy for one another. But we all understand it without the autistic having to basically think about acting it out. Kind of takes this whole thing of we lack empathy out of the water, doesn't it? And as I got more into advocacy, I noticed something else. Other neurodiverse individuals with not autism, but maybe they have ADHD or they have ADD, or that maybe they have Down syndrome, or one of the many. You see where I'm going with this here. I didn't have to do that around them either. It was extremely liberating. I can tell you that, folks. Very much so. And that is what finally broke me out of my pseudo-autistic bubble of nope that I had been around since I started basically elementary school. See what I mean? That's what I mean when I say that it's not true that we do not experience empathy. We do. We express emotions also. We just do so in a way that neurotypicals can't seem to understand. Now, if you are someone with a neurodiverse disability and you are a victim of abuse, where a part of your survival depended upon you being able to not show any emotion at all, unless you triggered a person further, it made it that much more difficult to learn how to act out the emotions the neurotypicals expected to see in me. This is true across the board, by the way. I've talked to others. My whole point is we have all of these things: empathy, sympathy. We feel and we outwardly express emotions. We are attached to our families, whether they can recognize this fact or not. It's just we do not communicate in a manner that neurotypicals have approved of and call acceptable. Instead, they want us to basically throw away everything about ourselves that make us unique and act, talk, speak, walk, dress, sound like them. I've had a problem with this for years. And no, folks, if you think there's a middle ground somewhere, there's not. There is no middle ground. There is no them wanting to learn a little bit more about how we express these things. No. No, they want to force us to do it their way. If you think that's not fair, that's because it is. This is part of why we are so tired and exhausted day after day after day. It takes an enormous amount of mental effort to show, display, and sound what the way neurotypicals want us to, so that we're not targeted. Okay? And the sad fact is, even when we do all these things, we're still targeted. All right, I just wanted to cover that here real briefly. That kind of went into a longer rant than I had anticipated. But now to the disclaimers, folks. In the description box, you're going to find a link to the article that the Judge Rotenberg Educational Center doesn't want you to read. It's written by NeuroClastic, a small non-for-profit started by autistics for autistics, wherein they interviewed and surveyed over 900 ABA professionals in regards to the JRC's quote-unquote behavior modification program. Matter of fact, the JRC doesn't want you to read this article so much, they have threatened NeuroClastic with a defamation lawsuit if they did not remove it from the website. NeuroClastic has refused, so you know the drill, folks. Please read that article and don't forget to share it on all your social media. You also got the other pertinent links. We also have linked in their NeuroClastic's public statement in regards to the defamation lawsuit threat, as well as their link to their GoFundMe. We are crowdfunding, folks, in case the JRC actually has the balls to see through with their threat. We got the pertinent links to the Agape boarding school, now known as Stone for Help situation as well. Right now, we just have that one article from Ozark First. Agape boarding school / now known as Stone for Help is a so-called Christian-themed boarding school based out of Stockton, Missouri that takes in so-called troubled male teens that has and pending over 21 civil lawsuits, claims, and allegations leveled against it, all which have been corroborated by the hard evidence found in the investigations done by the Missouri Department of Social Services that include the following. rape, sodomy, sexual assault, child abuse, psychological and emotional abuse, child trafficking, starvation, and that's just for starters. We have one former staff member arrested by the FBI, another, a doctor, still on the premises, I might add, upon multiple, again, substantiated claims by the investigation done by the Missouri Department of Social Services of rape, sodomy, and sexual assault of the boys there. You got an attorney general who refused to comment on anything regarding Agape or the fact that they've rebranded. Nothing, zilch, nada. Nothing on the state's case, literally nothing. And you got an attorney general who's so shoved up Mega's ass that he can't be bothered to deal with the abuse that is actually going on in his state, but will still fight the imaginary abuse that he says is going on in this state. Please spare me. So please, folks, read that article and share it on all your social media. We got the pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign as well, including Hoya's massive archive on the subject, a link to Jennifer Masumba's behavioral sheet of shockable offenses, a clip out of the 7-hour ordeal undergone by Andre McCollins back in 2002, the templates, and the ever-present self-explanatory change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. Folks, when we discuss the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of people with disabilities being tortured and abused. If you got young children present, please go ahead and use your headphones, all right? This channel is marked not for children for a reason. We use profanity and speak on dark subjects. If your child is 16 and younger and they are watching this, parental supervision is very obviously advised. All right, trigger warning. We are about to descend once more into the bullshit. Excuse me, allergies. The mad ravings of the lunatic mind known as Dr. Matthew Israel. You're going to hear lies. Bullshit propaganda easily torn apart. That's what I do. You're going to hear pseudoscience. You're going to hear enough ableism and bigotry to circle a globe a few thousand times. You're going to see gaslighting, victim blaming, the works. Okay, the works. The fundamentals of fucking stupid, alright? So, be warned, right? Okay. Now remember yesterday where we were at, where we were reading these so-called unsolicited testimonials, right? To give you a little background on that again, even though I did it the other day, unsolicited my ass. Matter of fact, we have evidence coming from one of the survivors of this place where she was forced with paper and pen to write garbage such as we're about to read before she was allowed to move on to the next activity. So, be prepped for that because we're about to read a bunch of bullshit. Shall we? Brian Avery, a former JRC student, recently wrote an unsolicited letter to JRC. The last 2 paragraphs of this letter are as follows. I'm going to stop you there, doctor. You've gone this whole entire thing not mentioning names. Now you're mentioning them. It's the token ploy, folks. It's the token ploy. You didn't mention it of the girl that you just did, or the previous guy. You got one dude. And you're trying to make it bigger than what it actually is. I've seen this shit so often, God. Get a new trope, people. I'm getting bored. About the GED, it saved my life. There are lots of opponents to this controversial yet potentially life-saving treatment, and understandably so. For someone who has never had the kind of problems I had, nor dealt with anyone who has my kind of problems, when hearing about the GED for the first time, it's only natural to cry torture. Bullshit! Bullshit alert. This is a bullshit alert. Folks, he's toting the exact same lines that Dr. Matthew Israel does. So what does this tell us, ladies and gentlemen? Does this mean this unsolicited student is someone who's trying to save us all by saying others should be on this device? No. I find it suspect when any of these little testimonials that the school puts out totes Dr. Matthew Israel's line verbatim. Matter of fact, this does not sound like an unsolicited letter. Because why do they all sound the same? Doctor. Funny, doctor, why do all these people sound like you? I call that suspect because it is. Y'all may think that we are all alike, but it's not actual reality. We're all very different individuals, just as one neurotypical is not going to be same as another neurotypical. When I see this toted as evidence, and when it sounds like Dr. Matthew Israel wrote it, I'm going to be pretty sure that's because he did write it, folks. They may even get Brian Avery to claim ownership over this little letter. But it sounds like something that was dictated from him, not something that came spontaneously from them. You know what I mean? But let's go further here. However, in reality, being on the GED is much nicer alternative than being warehoused in a hospital, incarcerated, or being doped up in psychotropic drugs to the point of oblivion. See, it's toting the same already multiple times on this channel, disproven bullshit. See, none of that is true. These are not the only options. Dr. Matthew Israel wants you to believe that they are. He's going to force these kids to write these bullshit letters and do their fake fucking testimonials to convince you that it's true. But it's not. I've worked in the field. None of that is true. None of it. There are thousands of programs out there. Because, as we all know, those of us who have logical brains, there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to treatment. That's just freaking stupidity. None of that is true. You can have the worst case scenario, worst behaviors on the planet. This is not the only way. There are thousands of them. And kid, you can't sit there and tote his lines and tell me that that was the only way, because I was you. Okay? I was these kids. I did those self-harms. At points I did act extremely aggressive. A hole in the door. Somewhere out in Miller can attest to that. Poor freaking door. Freaking destroyed that thing. Beat it up like it owed me money. My point is, as someone who has worked in this field, somebody who still consults in this field, and still continues to study it, I know that that is a lie. Dr. Matthew Israel has got some of these kids to swallow this lie and to regurgitate it almost verbatim. Because even if the threat is no longer there, even if they're no longer on that device, we all know how PTSD works. That fear remains for the rest of our fucking lives. Especially if you just newly left. You really think this person's fucking abuser doesn't have power over him? just simply from the psychological damage and havoc that they've run? Yeah, they do. I'm afraid to tell you, but it's true. But let's read the rest of it here. I did not like being on the GED when I felt like acting up because it prevented me from being able to do so. Lie! Lie. That is a lie. It had nothing to do with preventing them from doing whatever actions you want to do. You ever seen a person on PCP? I have. My mom's worked in the ERs my entire life. My brother followed suit not long after her after he got out of the army. That's a lie. No matter how much pain you put an individual in, if they are determined to act out, there is no force on this earth that's going to be able to stop them, particularly when they are in autistic and they're in meltdown. This is again trying to convince us that these behaviors are willful. It's not true. They are not willful. We did not just go and decide, maybe I'm just going to be a little bit more autistic today. Maybe I'm just going to really let those traits out. Just go nuts. That's not how any of this works. Literally not how any of this works. Not at all. Not at all. See, the reason why people like us wouldn't like that device is not because it's stopping us from doing what we want to do. Nothing on this earth can stop an autistic from doing what we want to do, no matter how much pain is inflicted. I know this because, hey, been there. Okay? See what I mean? Yeah. I didn't have a filter when I was younger either. Okay? They don't like the GED because it's painful. Because it's designed to be painful. It is in fact used to cause the most amount of pain as humanly fucking possible without killing them. And kid, you can't convince me otherwise when my logic and understanding of fucking electricity volts speak otherwise. You're on 85 MPa, shocked about 10 times a day. And you're really going to tell me that you don't like the device because it kept you from doing what you want? I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I have to call bullshit. Major bullshit. But let's read the rest of it here, shall we? But in the end, I am thankful for the GED because of the enormous progress I made with it and have continued to make once I no longer needed it. That's a lie, kid. That's a lie. You're going to sit there and tell me that you have not experienced any psychological trauma from being tortured, starved, traumatized by staff randomly grabbing and attacking you. You're going to tell me you're not traumatized by loss of sleep, loss of food, particularly when you are a young, growing teen. I'm sorry, but I am afraid I have to call bullshit. That is a lie. What I have seen with some autistics, they're rare, but they do exist, are individuals who, maybe through a subconscious need of survival, will actually allow themselves to believe in this shit. Okay? They do it as a means of self-protection almost. Well, I am bad. I must need these things. I mean, look what happens when it does happen. I stop what I'm doing. It must be working, but it's false logic. And we can look to history, of which I am a most rabid student, to see why that's a lie. Okay? Torture and fear work. This is true. But kid, tell me what happens when that fear factor is removed from you. Tell me what happens when the psychological trauma that you've compartmentalized and tucked away back in the corner of your mind to never deal with while singing the song that they want you to sing, what happens when you can no longer hold it in that compartment anymore? Speaking of someone who's been through abuse, I could tell you, and it's a real fucking doozy. It's autistic shutdown, folks. It's autistic shutdown. Shutdown of emotions, rational thought. It has severe psychological and physical consequences. You can lie to yourself for years if you want to, as a means to try to protect yourself from the truth, but the truth will always out itself. And at some point, you're going to have to confront the trauma of what you were put through and be forced to see the truth of this place. That's as if he actually believes it. We already know for a fact by reading the details given by other survivors of this place, as well as surveillance camera footage, and yes, the New York report, to know that these little testimonies that he said happened spontaneously are coerced. That, in a matter of fact, when they're making these videos and letters, they will force the before and after to all happen within the same day. This is what, like, when she came to the center, and then they will directly trigger a behavior and force them to do it, or they'll shock them. Then they do the behavior. They get shocked. And then they force them to mask for the second half of the video. We can force a smile on our face the same way you do, neurotypicals. Just saying. Some people may wind up spending the majority of their life at JRC while being able to enjoy the benefits and privileges the program has, while others like myself are able to go on and live an independent life. Bullshit! Kid, what benefits do you think this place has? You have no legitimate transition system. You have no legitimate medical treatment or any other form of treatment going on. There is no circles of support. There is no teams. There's just abuse, and more abuse. Okay? The benefits of torture. Fuck me, kid. Fuck me. I hope to God, wherever you are, that you have legitimately since then sought the help you need and have been able to deal with the trauma that you were forced to go through in a healthy manner. Because those of us who lie to ourselves like this and toed the line of our abusers, one day the lies that we tell ourselves fall apart. As I said, folks, that's a very bad day. I'm going to finish this up here. I would currently be locked up and heavily medicated in a hospital or in jail or possibly even dead. So for those who have set out to ban the GED, please don't. That's a lie. It's the lie, folks. He's demonizing you, kid, and you sucked it up, took it in, and said, yes, I must be an awful person. It's this false logic, like, if I wasn't such a horrible person, they wouldn't need to torture and abuse me. It's the same thing that a lot of abused kids go through. Because I did. We have a tendency to blame ourselves instead of the individuals who are abusing us. We reason out that somehow we have done something to deserve this. Sometimes we can even convince ourselves that what's happening to us is for our own good. But it's a lie, folks. It's not true. This individual is very obviously a kid who's been severely abused and has either A, internalized it, and has been broken apart and ripped to shreds to the point that they actually believe that they are at fault and that they deserved what happened to them. Or it's another episode of Dr. Matthew Israel dictating the letter word for fucking word. And if it's not him, it's the parents. And if you think that the parents would never do that, please. I've seen it. In my office, right in front of me, I might add. So what are we learning from this episode, kids? I know most of you aren't kids. Just go with me. We are learning just how despicable, once again, Dr. Matthew Israel is. That he feels absolutely nothing about psychologically breaking and destroying these kids. And nothing makes them happier on this earth than to make these kids believe that what he's doing to them is for their own good and it's what they deserve. To make these kids believe that they are at fault and that they deserve to be treated like this. And that if he didn't treat them in this horrifically, obviously abusive manner, that they would be out on the streets, in jail, or dead. Because it's a lie. That is one of the most insidious things this man does to children. It's not true. If any of you watch this, none of what happened to you was your fault. You did not deserve to be treated this way. This was not the only way. There were others out there. Other programs, treatments out there that could have been used in a way to be able to help you improve your life without torturing you, without starving you, without traumatizing and grabbing and threatening you, without taking away your ability to sleep, your autonomy, your ability to make decisions for yourself. No one has that right. You did not deserve. Hear me on this, because it took me years to wrap my brain around this. You did not do anything to deserve to get treated like this. And this was not the only option, or otherwise jail, psychotropic coma, or dead. That's what these people want you to believe. It's what they use to justify the horrific abuse that they get up to. You did nothing wrong. You are not at fault. That is the lie. What was done to these kids, there's no excuses. There's no worded papers. There's no bullshit data that Dr. Matthew Israel can pull out of his ass and slap his name on and call it evidence that can ever justify what was done to you in this place. Don't let your parents, don't let the advocates that are on his side, don't let anyone tell you different. Okay? You did not deserve any of this. You deserved humane treatment that saw you as a human being worthy of dignity and respect. You deserved a program that was well-rounded based on a full functional assessment where you weren't constantly torn apart every single day and told just how wrong you are for being born the way that you were. It's not your fault. Just like it's not any abuse or torture victim's fault. Okay? That is the lie that they sold you. It's not true. Don't hate yourself for these bastards. They are the guilty. They are at fault. They are the ones with something fundamentally fucking wrong with them. Never forget that. I'll close out on that, folks. We don't get very many views on this channel. The few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So please don't forget to hit the like button, hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit the comments. I do appreciate your time. As always, we here at Spilling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye, everyone.